Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
This is your captain speaking, John Regan. I'll be your guest host for today. Yes, it's been a couple of months since I've been on with USA Prepares, and just to give a quick update for everybody, I'm still having the same symptoms, don't know what's causing it, and still working on finding out a way of taking care of the problems. And we're also trying to determine if Doc Wallach is going to be with us today. So in the meantime, sit back, fasten your seatbelts. I've got some, really disturbing information. You can follow along at thefinancialstateoftheunion.com and go to the news tab, and I have the resources posted for today. It's been over 5 years. February of 2012, to be exact, was the first time I was on USA Prepares talking about the financial state of the union. And a lot's happened in the meantime. And we are seeing more and more signs that telling us the trouble's about to hit. Initially, I thought that we would see things sooner. I didn't didn't even know about quantitative easing at the time. That wasn't something they taught us in grad school for finance. And the trillions of dollars that has been created to prop up this economy since 2008, all they did was kick the can down the road and make it to where the correction is going to be that much worse. When I wrote the book, The Financial State of the Union, I was looking at the lessons of history, and that's after such a correction, what usually follows is war. Now, that doesn't necessarily happen immediately. We look at our last example where we had the crash of 1929. After that, we had the Great Depression, which lasted several years. And then we had our entry into World War II in December of 1941. The other option, which I'd been talking about on the air, that I did not discuss in the book, is what happens when you don't have that war. And when you don't have that war, with the technology that we have today and in the works, we're going to see more and more erosion of our privacy. And ultimately, that becomes control, which is the goal of these sociopaths that are in power, both in government and corporations. So the question is always, when is the crash going to be? People have talked about it for a long time. We've even heard the warning since the 80s. And the reason that it hasn't happened yet is because in 71, Nixon took us off the gold standard for settlement of international payments. And by using made-up, worthless pieces of paper known as Federal Reserve notes, we've been able to just kick the can down the road by expanding the debt. And now that debt is getting to such a point that it's no longer sustainable. You can imagine if you knew somebody where their income was not enough to cover their taxes and their debt service, paying the interest and any minimum required payment towards the principal. And while that's bad for a family, it generally doesn't hurt the economy as a whole. And in fact, companies make allowances for debts that can't be collected. For the most part, governments will find a way of taking whatever they can to satisfy any back taxes. But when you get to the point where, as a country, you don't have enough total income to pay for the government spending and debt service, that's when you have very severe problems. And I don't believe that has ever happened in the history of our civilization. Well, the Greater Depression is coming. We don't know exactly when. We've got many signs, and we'll cover those signs today. The usual timing tends to be around September or October, but it can happen on any month. And other than what I'm giving you today, don't expect any warning in the news. I don't see anything that will tell us exactly when it will happen. If you remember in 2008, it just happened, and we end up being hours away from the financial system collapsing. And we don't even know which direction it's coming from. There's so many wonderful choices. Part of it is the debt, and what's scary on that side is we're seeing less debt creation, which is very bad for the economy because our whole system is built on expansion, unlimited expansion. And when that debt turns around, that means there's less spending going on, and that starts rippling. When, it could also come from the banking sector, especially Europe. We have banks there that are having problems. And there's China having slowdowns. And just needless to say, it's not just a United States problem, it's a worldwide problem. And whichever one starts the dominoes falling, it's going to affect the rest of them. I do want to alleviate any fears that we're going to have an immediate war, regardless of what's going on in Korea or the Middle East. And this is something I discovered in getting ready for the Hear the Watchman conference. In my presentation, I was in Matthew 24, and that led me into Daniel. In Matthew 24, it talks about the abomination that causes desolation. And what I ended up learning out of my exercise, I start off with, I have a link there, Daniel 12, verses 11 and 12. And it says, from the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there'll be 3.5 years. Well, that shows that the abomination, which many believe is when the Antichrist goes into the temple and sets himself up as, God of everything, is two different events. He goes in first at the point and stops the daily sacrifices. Then at the end of the 7 years is the abomination, which will be the destruction of the third temple. And when you add on Daniel 9:27, it talks about in the middle of 7, he'll put an end to the sacrifice. Sacrifice started at the beginning of the 7. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation. And since the temple isn't there yet, and it's going to take at least 6 months to build the temple, that means we've got at least 7.5 years until that war can happen. Now, I've talked about before that with that EMP nuclear type war, that given our current state of readiness, we'd be looking at a 99.5% fatality rate. I've got a couple of more quotes there. Putin recently said, "No one would survive," and Jesus said, "Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive." But we're not there yet, and you do need to be ready and supplementing your food supply. This is John Regan. Be back after this break. This is John Regan at the controls today. We now have Dr. Wallach with us. Good morning, Dr. Wallach.
Good morning, Vincent.
This is John Regan. Vincent's,
oh, John, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Vincent had to take off today. It's been a few years since we've had a chance to chat. In fact, I think it was back last time when you were at the Get Prepared Expo in Springfield.
Sure.
So what do you have on tap for today?
Okay, well, what I want to talk about is the pre-existing conditions, which is the great crisis on Earth, right?
Right.
We're talking about all the insurance companies leaving the various counties and cities in the U.S., and people are down to no health care. Well, I do have health care, but it's a $6,000 deductible, so I can't afford it, kind of thing. And this audience for preparers is the exact audience that we need to listen to, and to listen to us, because one thing we have with longevity is the ability to prevent and to eliminate all of these pre-existing conditions. High blood pressure, diabetes, kidney dialysis, fibromyalgia, lupus, arthritis, heart disease, asthma, bronchitis, COPD, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome. All of these things are totally preventable and reversible, and you get down to the point where you're just taking a maintenance program with the 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And to understand the program, of course, we have CDs. We've got the Dead Doctors Don't Lie, which is the classic. Dead Doctors Don't Lie, the book, the CD, the DVD. My newest book is Epigenetics, The Death of the Genetic Disease Transmission, because, John, there's thousands of failed medical theories every century, and the 20th century, 21st century is no different. And the theories that all of our diseases are caused by bad genes are bad theories. Even obesity is actually caused by a nutritional deficiency. Obesity is not caused by eating too much or lack of exercise. So, people on their own can do a physical for $4.50, and your doctor will bill you for $2,000 for the same physical. And again, just reading a little bit, listening to the CDs, you'll be able to deal with all this yourself. And let's say somebody's got type 2 diabetes. Well, instead of treating it with tablets and insulin for 10, 15, 20 years and getting your toes amputated and going blind and getting cardiovascular disease as complications, let's just get rid of your type 2 diabetes in, say, 2 to 6 weeks. Let's get rid of your arthritis and your bone spurs in, say, 60 to 90 days. Let's get rid of your high blood pressure and your heart disease. For instance, congestive heart failure is a simple nutritional deficiency of one single vitamin deficiency. We've known it for 300 years. And kidney failure, when you have kidney failure on dialysis, there's nothing wrong with your kidneys. It's actually a blood vessel problem. We solve that, and you get off of dialysis. You don't have to be on dialysis for 20, 30 years or until they can find you a kidney for kidney transplant. So these are the sort of things that are available, and if our listeners are ready, I'm ready, and you're ready, you have the technology, let's have some callers come in, and we can answer questions on these pre-existing conditions, and we don't need the government. That's the whole goal here, is to be self-sufficient, be prepared, and let the government stay out of our lives, especially when it comes to healthcare. They have failed us terribly. The medical system has failed us terribly. Medical doctors, John, I don't know if you know this, but are the third leading cause of death in America, and each year, medical doctors in hospitals alone kill, that's the word Johns Hopkins used when they did this study just a couple months ago. Each year, medical doctors kill 251,000 Americans in hospitals just from simple mistakes. Now, here's the question. What would happen if North Korea or Iran were to send over an intercontinental ballistic missile with a terrible weapon and kill 251,000 Americans? It would immediately be a declaration of war. Even the most avid anti-war protester would call for a declaration of war if one of these countries were to kill 251,000 Americans. Well, here's one trade. The medical trade kills 251,000 people in their workplace every year by accident, and they get a walk. So it's time we back off and take care of ourselves. Back to you, brother.
The call-in number is 1-866-582-9933. That's 1-866-582-9933. As far as I know, we've still got one engineer covering two shows, so we might have to try more than once. It's Captain John Regan with Dr. Joel Wallach. We'll be back after this break. Well, Vincent will be back on Monday. He just has some things to take care of today. It's John Regan sitting in, along with Dr. Joel Wallach this morning. Let me go ahead and give out the Longevity Protocol order hotline. That's 417-863-7149, 417-863-7149. And I know I hurriedly gave out the phone number for the call-in. It's 1-866-582-9933, 1-866-582-9933. If you have questions for Dr. Wallach, you can call us and we'll see what Doc Wallach has to say. You know, it's amazing. Yes, Doctor?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
It's amazing to me the deficiencies in our diet that we have today, and it's not really anything new. There was a Senate report from 1936 talking about the problem of mineral depletion in our soil. And I remember reading an article that was talking about potassium deficiency, and that 98% of Americans are deficient. And our bodies need nearly 5 grams a day, so if you were having to supplement all of that, these bottles, which are typically 99 milligrams with 100 tablets in the bottle, that would only last a person 2 days. Fortunately, our food's not totally depleted of it, but we're not getting enough, and just in the electrolytes, potassium, magnesium,
chlorine.
Those cause problems. Yeah, and you some of the problems, you get cramps and I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Okay, thanks. Well, you're exactly right. So we have a very, very huge problem here. And, of course, we have epidemics of obesity, epidemics of diabetes, epidemics of arthritis, epidemics of heart disease, epidemics of Alzheimer's disease. That's because these nutrients are no longer found in our food. And technology has been our greatest benefit, but on the other hand, technology has been our greatest killer. Thousands and thousands of years ago, the universal fuel was wood, and people would throw the wood ashes into the gardens, and they knew it was a fertilizer. What they didn't know was the plants were absorbing the minerals out of those ashes, and 98% that powder we call wood ashes were really 90% was really minerals that the tree would suck up out of the ground. The squash and the peas and corn and tomatoes and carrots and beets and potatoes and onions would suck up these minerals. When people would eat from their garden that was fertilized with wood ashes, they were getting the minerals. Now, they didn't know that. Well, when electricity came along, that 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, on Pearl Street in New York City, when Thomas Edison pulled the switch on the first commercial electric getting plant. It didn't take but 10 years for everybody to quickly convert to electricity and give up wood. But nobody knew they were getting their minerals from the wood ashes, and so they didn't replace that source, and that began the downward spiral of where we're at now. And so we have this huge problem because our foods do not contain these minerals, and here's why. Plants only require 3 elements from the soil, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. A plant will do very well, make good seeds for the next generation, give you a good crop with just NPK, commercial fertilizer, Monsanto, Dow Chemical Company. And nobody knew that they were getting the minerals from the wood ashes, so they didn't replace that source of minerals. And so when they went to electricity, suddenly now they're only getting NPK, and we're not getting the various vitamins and minerals that are necessary. We need 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. If you don't supplement, and you're just eating food from farms, even organic farms, organic just means there's no sprays. It says nothing about the nutritional value of the food. And so you could be eating a great meal with all these wonderful vegetables and only be getting 3 elements where you're 57 short. And so this is why we have these epidemics of all these terrible diseases, these pre-existing conditions. Of course, we're the number 1 obese nation in the world, and that's because obesity is not due to lack of exercise and eating too much, which is the theory we've been running on for 125 years. Obesity is due to the deficiency of any one of nutrients, a particular class of nutrients. You're missing 2 or 3 in that class, you're going to be overweight, and certainly you might even be obese. But there's 3 of those elements in that class. If you're missing any one of those 3, you're going to be the 300-pound, 500-pound, 600-pound, 700-pound person. And that's where we're at. We are the number 1 obese nation in the world because these nutrients are no longer available to us through the food. If you don't supplement, you're in trouble. And, of course, the experts are telling us that our children, John, are going to be the first generation of Americans who do not live as long as their parents. This is a horrible prediction, but it will come true. It's one of these predictions of biblical proportions, like the earth is going to end. I mean, just think, every couple of Americans will be burying their kids if they don't supplement them because these very, very critical elements and nutrients are no longer found in our food because we're using electricity. We're not using wood ashes anymore, which were historically our source of nutritional minerals. And so we have to consciously supplement with these things so your genes, DNA, RNA, and telomeres require these nutrients. And, of course, one of the things we're very, very proud of in Longevity, we have the complete spectrum of what everybody needs, the 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And we have food storage. We've got what we call Go Foods. That's one of our divisions. You know, it's a 25-year shelf life, freeze-dried complete meals, freeze-dried flowers, and not like blooming flowers with petals on it, but we're talking about flour where you can make your own gluten-free pancakes, and they're all organic and non-GMO. We're very, very proud of that. And we have Beyond Organics, which, of course, is just a legendary series of grass-fed cattle, cheeses and milk, and also things like yogurt and butter from these grass-fed cattle. They're not getting any grain. They're just getting grass and minerals. And it's just beautiful products, plus the 90 essential nutrients. And we can prevent and eliminate as many as 900 different diseases using these programs. Now, for our new listeners, what makes me different, I have a degree in agriculture. I'm a veterinarian. I'm a primary care physician licensed in California and Oregon. But I also have a degree in pathology. I've done big government projects where I've done 20,000 autopsies, 1,700 autopsies, 2,500 autopsies, sort of things. And these are all written up in 75 scientific articles. I have 14 best-selling books for the general public. And I just love coming out to Branson, Missouri, and all the other places where Vincent has these wonderful shows, where we have the Prepare shows, and we have a booth there, so we're always looking forward to introducing him. We have Jim Stewart, who's our kind of our local rep there. That's the local phone number. We'll go to Jim Stewart. And he's been with me for years and years, and Jim and Vincent Finelli and I have been working together for years and years. And we're here to make sure that everybody knows how to survive a breakdown in the system, whether it's we're being hacked by unfriendly people all over the world, and suddenly now we don't have delivery of food and we don't have delivery of utilities and power, and water and so forth. We have all that stuff. We have bottles with filters in the bottle where you can take ditch water and then squeeze the bottle and you push it through the filter in the bottle and you have clean water, just because we have these filter bottles. And then, of course, we have colloidal silver for wound disinfectants. They have PureWorks, which is skin disinfectants. When you get these things which are skin disinfectants that have alcohol in them, like Purell kind of thing, the alcohol will kill bugs, but it only kills bugs as long as it's wet. As soon as it dries, it's useless. Our PureWorks, whether it's the spray or the foam or the, let's see here, we also have the lotion and the liquid, the shower gel and shampoo, they work even after they dry for 4 to 5 hours. And when the grid goes down, whether it's from a natural disaster, fires and earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes and landslides and all these kinds of things, personal hygiene is extremely important, because any little scratch, and you're not taking a shower every day and washing your hands after you go to the bathroom, or cleaning a deer you just killed or whatever, you're not washing up and cleaning up and have a disinfectant like our PureWorks, you get an infection. And then any simple little infection can take you out. So you have to be aware of all these things. I actually have a book, John, called Prepare. And it was written specifically for the listeners of this program. It's called Prepare. And the subtitle is The Prepper's Survival Bible. And, of course, you can contact us through Jim Stewart. And you gave out the number very nicely. Thank you. And we can give it out again. And get all this stuff. Have enough of these 90 essential nutrients. The basic program we call the Healthy Start Pack has all 90 essential nutrients in it. And then we have what we call secret sauces for different health problems. For instance, let's say a typical person in their 60s and 70s, they might have high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, obesity, kidney failure, heart disease. They got 6, 7 diseases, and they're going to 12 specialists, and they're on 27 prescription drugs for all this. We can get them off all those prescription drugs. Their doctors will starve because you're not going to have to go to the doctors anymore, and your body will heal itself given these nutrients. And so this is the value of knowing what we know. And so I urge everybody to contact us through the number at the show. You can ask us questions now. Our contact.
Doctor, we do have a call. We do have a caller. Are you ready?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the caller's name because my audio messed up. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
Caller, are you there?
Dr. C, welcome to USA Prepares.
Can you hear me?
Can hear
I
you.
can barely hear. What's your name, sir?
This is Dr. Jim Caesar from Branson, Missouri.
Okay. Please meet you, sir. What kind of doctor? Yeah.
I'm a doctor of osteopathic medicine,
Okay.
general practice.
DO?
I've been in practice for 37 years.
Okay, you ought to know.
Pardon me?
I said you ought to know something practicing for 37 years. How can we help?
A little bit. 3 common problems that I have always seen a lot in the office, I think, could all be helped with your nutritional products. And I would like some, I know you have many different products when I look online. And I wonder if you could make some recommendations for each of these problems.
Oh, we're gonna run to one of these guys in a moment, so hang on, we'll come back.
That's fine.
We'll answer your question. Hang on, Doctor.
We'll be back in just a few minutes. This is John Regan sitting in for Vincent today. Dr. Caesar, you were saying you were seeing conditions that you believe could be nutrition-related. Please continue.
Yes. One of the major complaints that patients have had in all my years of general practice, number one is fatigue. I was wondering what Dr. Wallach's specific product recommendation would be for that.
Sure. Okay. Well, fatigue in a human being is like a car. Let's say you have a vehicle of any kind, a combustion engine, and instead of having 100 octane, you only have 20 octane. And the fuel will make the car run, but it's not going to be very peppy. You're not going to be able to go up hills at a high rate of speed and that sort of stuff. And so the same way with human beings, we require the 90 essential nutrients to make our metabolic biochemistry work. And we're talking about, again, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. We go by body weight. Remember, I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician. And so we go by body weight. And per 100 pounds body weight, I like people, when they have an energy problem, to start out with our bigger hammer, I call it, instead of the basic starter pack, which is a healthy start pack. I like to use the Health, Brain, and Heart pack, which has more stuff in it for the biochemistry of the cell. And there's one Healthy Brain and Heart pack per 100 pounds of body weight. And then I like to throw in also the immortalium, which is the actual food for our stem cells. And it makes the stem cells in our every cell in our body work better, which includes our mitochondria, the little energy-producing machines in our cells, work better. And then we actually have a sports drink and an energy drink. The sports drink we call Rebound. For instance, Gatorade has 2 nutrients. Powerade has 6 nutrients. Our Rebound has 100 nutrients, including 78 minerals. So 100 nutrients gives you a lot more energy for a lot longer than a drink with 2 nutrients. And then we have a wonderful energy drink called Pollen Burst. I like the Gushing Grape. It's drop-dead gluten-free. And this was the formula that the Olympic team from Finland that won all of the track events back in the 1960s and 70s. And they were using pollen and these various nutrients as an energy drink, but nobody else that was even thinking of energy drinks. And we're the ones that have sole access forever and ever. We actually bought the patent for the formula. Okay, it's called Pollen Burst, and I like the Gushing Grape flavor. It's drop-dead gluten-free. So Pollen Burst, of course, is a great energy drink. The Rebound is our sports drink, 100 nutrients in it. And then we have a tea company, Rico Life, which is one of organic teas, black teas and green teas. We also have our Jovolution coffee. We have the actual best blend coffees. We actually own the plantations in Nicaragua, and so we have really great coffee. And new research shows when you drink tea and you drink coffee, you actually live longer by 5 to 10 years than people who don't drink coffee and tea. And so we're premium roast. We have flavored coffees as well as the premium roast and the decaf. But it doesn't matter. Even if you're drinking decaffeinated coffee, you get the longevity benefit, because it's not the caffeine that gives you the longevity benefit. Apparently there's other antioxidants and substances in the coffee and the tea that give you this extended lifespan. So, again, the basic program, 1 Healthy Brain and Heart pack with 100 pounds of body weight, 1 bottle of the immortalium, which is our stem cell food, okay, to get the stem cells in all your bodies to be their maximum in terms of energy conversion and also being able to fend off disease and function properly. And then, of course, our sports drink Rebound and our energy drink, the Gushing Grape Pollen Burst. So that's kind of what I do myself. I take what we call secret sauces, over 900 different diseases, and I do that every day. Since my day doctor, 75 years, coming December.
And we're out of time for this hour. Thanks for the call. Thank you, Dr. Wallach, for being here. And that order hotline again is 417-863-7149. We'll be back after the top of the hour news. This is your captain speaking, John Regan. I'll be your host for the next hour. Vincent will be back on Monday. Since we were talking about health last hour, I'm going to skip down, and if you want to follow along at home, I've got resources for today. That's at thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. An easier way is easyE33.org, and the news tab will get you to the resources. And the next to last link says, what if humans made their own vitamin C? Humans are one of the few mammals that don't make their own vitamin C. We've also got fruit bats, guinea pigs, and the other primate monkeys that have to have their vitamin C come from their diet. And this study that was done was very interesting. It used mice, and depending on the intake of vitamin C, it ended up expanding their life. And when you look at the animals that do manufacture their own vitamin C versus those that don't, you find that those that make their own vitamin C live 8 to 10 times beyond their age of physical maturation, whereas the mammals that don't have that ability is typically 3 to 4 times. And I found this interesting because those that think that those stories in the Bible and Genesis of people living for hundreds of years is some kind of fiction. I believe back then that humans were still producing their own vitamin C. And if that is so, then that does, theoretically anyway, according to this research, produce humans that live for hundreds of healthy years. So I'm sure that's going to drive a lot of the Bible haters crazy. And in case you missed the first hour, the first segment, I was setting up why I don't expect to see that war, the World War III, where we've got nukes and EMP and things of that nature. And the reason I say that with certainty is I believe in the Bible. I covered the prophecies that's in Daniel. The links are there in the post. And if we have that war now, it's basically not survivable. And if you want to survive that war, you have to be living a lifestyle already that pretty much is like what the Amish live. And even the Amish are going to have a hard time. And even if you make it to the other side of that, and I remember it was back in the mid-'80s when I started my interest in preparing, that I learned that just because nukes are used doesn't mean that you necessarily die. Now, if you're in the target area, the blast and radiation, that does ruin your day. If you're in the fallout area, you do need to be in some kind of fallout shelter for probably 2 or 3 weeks, and you need to have radiation detectors that will tell you when it is safe to come out. But we've learned a whole lot since then. And if you've been listening to USA Prepares, you've probably heard Matt Stein. And he talks about the 400 Chernobyls that would happen after such a war. And if you haven't heard that, you can get online and search 400 Chernobyls, and you'll find one of Matt's interviews, and you can listen to that. But basically what happens is these nuclear power plants out there are dependent on electricity from the grid in order to cool their reactor and their spent fuel pools. And if that electricity is gone, those materials then start reacting on their own, much like what's happening in Fukushima right now. And that puts large amounts of radiation in the air. And 400 of those is probably not survivable in a fairly short amount of time. Obviously, the more radiation you get, the quicker you die. Even low-level radiation, enough of that produces problems over time. We're seeing some of that happen with Fukushima already. But even with these levels from Fukushima, you're talking about 5 years before seeing some of the symptoms. So I'm believing like what it says in Matthew 24. When you see that happen, and what Jesus describes is what we've been talking about with nuclear winter. And Yeah, he does say that if not the days were shortened, that no flesh would survive. But in the meantime, but the problem is if we have that war in the meantime, that's a big problem for Christians, because with that war and nobody being left around, and I'm not sure the human race would survive. And if they did survive, it would take at least a number of centuries to rebuild the population enough to be able to fulfill these prophecies. But if that war kills everybody off, then we've got the problem of Daniel being a false prophet, and then Jesus and his confirmation of Daniel would make Jesus a liar. Dying would be the least of our problems, because as Christians we count on the prophecies being true and Jesus being true to his word as well. So, looking at what's coming, there's a number of other people that have a lot more financial experience than I do that are saying some pretty interesting things. So first up, I've got Jim Rogers. He's saying it's going to be the worst crash in our lifetime. We're going to see countries fail. We're going to see institutions fail. If you remember, in 2008, we had Lehman Brothers, been around 150 years, and they're gone. There could be other institutions you're used to, whether it's museums, universities, financial firms are definitely going to be in the crosshairs. It's going to, rock your world. And then we've got another hedge fund manager, Eric Peters. He's saying that he's expecting this to happen Valentine's Day 2018, which is just a few months away. Personally, I don't think it's going to take that long, because there's a political component to this as well. I don't think it's any secret that those in power, the establishment, which includes a lot of Republicans in Congress, and you know who I'm talking about, they don't like Trump because he doesn't play the globalist game. Unfortunately, he's surrounded himself with a bunch of those types. But, I can understand, there's the adage, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But, you have the Republicans, you have the Democrats. They want to damage Trump, make him as ineffective as possible. And one of the ways of doing that is to go ahead and pull the plug on this economy, which it's going to do so in its own weight sooner or later. But if they start that this fall, I think February would be the absolute latest. That would give several months of economic heartache for the average American, and I believe their hope would be that would cause Democrats to get one or both houses of Congress and make it where Trump cannot do very much to change things. And as we slip into this next recession, which will, I think, is just part of the depression that's underway, that much like the Great Depression, people aren't going to care about the Constitution. They just want somebody to fix their problems and get them food. And we've already, in the neighborhood of 15% of the country in the soup lines with what's called food stamps. And as that gets worse, that problem accelerates as well. Sean Regan, continue after the break. This is Sean Regan at the controls today. We're covering the financial condition, and it's it's not looking good. We've got more quotes that include people like Mark Faber saying that investors are on the Titanic. Stocks are about to endure a gut-wrenching drop. Economist Andrew Smithers saying stocks are about 80% overvalued. And there's several different ratios out there for, in fact, about 24. And depending on which one you use, stocks are either the most overvalued or about the third most overvalued. And that includes events such as before the 1929 drop and before the 2008 and 1999 drops. In 1929, and this didn't drop all at once. You had the initial crash, but eventually stocks fell by 89%. We commonly round that to 90%. In 1999, they fell by half. And just keep in the back of your mind that we have these pension funds that are already having problems. When these stocks crash to these kind of levels, that means these pension funds are going to be more underfunded at a time when they're having to pay out benefits because of the retirement of the baby boomers. At the same time, we have the central banks, in our case the Federal Reserve, raising interest rates. So as the interest rates go up, the value of bonds go down. So the bonds that these pension funds hold will decrease in value. They also invest in real estate. We have a housing bubble that in part has been caused by foreign investors, especially people from China that have been wanting to get their cash out of China. And they don't care about what the price of the house is, and they'll just get the cash over here and move it around so that they don't have to mess with the Chinese government getting their hands on it. We've also got a lot of problems in the commercial space, especially retail. We're looking at record numbers of stores closing this year, more so than from the 2008 correction. Restaurants are having problems, so they're not wanting to expand, and some of those are closing. So it's kind of a gift that keeps on giving. And history says, this is Mark Yusko. He's the Chief Investment Officer of Morgan Creek Capital Management. He says we're going to have a crash and it'll be massive. The working age population is declining, and since consumption makes up 70% of our economy, that will continue to fall. And he also brings up a bit of history. Every time a president leaves the White House after 2 terms, there is a recession within the first year of the new administration. And he believes that this time will be no different. And while we could get into why, there's that historical precedent out there. We just don't have time to go that deep. And on the flip side, we recently had the Fed chair, Janet Yellen. I don't believe we will see another crisis in our lifetime. And I've got a couple of links after that we plain don't have time for, that gets into other famous quotes like John McCain in 2008, the economy is fundamentally sound. Fed Chair Bernanke in 2007 talking about how the subprime real estate crisis or problem would not spill over into the general market. And if that's not enough for you, I've got some other Great Depression quotes where they're saying ridiculous things that I'm sure we'll see more of between now and the actual correction. This is John Regan. Be right back after the bottom of the hour break. This is John Regan at the controls today. For those of you following along, theunion.com. We're down to the debt and liability section, and I'm going to just cover the highlights of this because I really want to get to the signs before we run out of time for today. In case you missed it, the news came out that the budget deficit for this year is expected to jump to $702 billion. It's a $99 billion spike from what was projected just a few months ago. And that won't be all of the deficit further because this is just the budget deficit. There's all the off-budget items that add to that. So probably around $1 trillion. And you do not see this if you check out the Treasury debt to the penny, because right now the debt ceiling is frozen. Congress will have to deal with that later this year. And I do not expect to see a shutdown on that because the Democrats want to lay blame on Trump for what's coming. They don't want to do anything that's going to cause blame to be on them. We've also had the 2017 Social Security and Medicare trustee reports come out. As pretty much expected, the situation's got marginally worse. The present value of the unfunded liabilities for Social Security by itself is now up to $12.5 trillion. That is not what it would take to fix the problem. That's how much we would have to invest today earning interest in order to meet that. When you look at the single year tables, and you won't find these in the report itself, you have to go to the online. At the bottom of the list is the G10 table. It has the information for and just so you understand what you're looking at when you get there, OASDI is Social Security and HI is Medicare. The intermediate projection is what's used in all the reports, and if you go to the last column in that table, that's the shortfall by year. So for just the next 75 years, the shortfall in dollars, not adjusted, so you're using constant dollars, the shortfall for each year added up is over $200 trillion for the next 75 years. One of the things I'm working on, I need to take several of these tables and make it to where you can put in what you think the reduction in labor force is going to be. There's, we've talked about this a number of times too, the jobs that will be replaced by robots and artificial intelligence is going to cause the labor force to go down. With the smaller labor force, there won't be as much wages to tax, and that's going to really mess with all these already overly optimistic projections for Social Security and Medicare. So that's not what I'm expecting to cause the problem, but it's kind of like a killer asteroid financially. We've also seen a report global debt hits a new record high of $217 trillion. That's $12 trillion more than what we had in 2012. So in just 5 years, basically they've propped up the economy with more than $2 trillion of new debt a year. And of course, with debt comes interest. Moody's is saying that a modest downside could spark a $3 trillion surge in pension liabilities, and the last one will pensions be a trigger or a casualty. There's a lot of financial shenanigans going on with pension funds as well. We have a 2017 report saying that total unfunded pension liabilities are at $3.85 trillion, but that is counting on a pretty high interest rate. With basically using a 7.5% annual return, the unfunded liabilities, and again, this is present value, so it's going to take a lot more than that to fix the problem. We would need additional almost $1.4 trillion, earning 7.5%. If you use a more conservative return of 2.8%, that's when the unfunded liabilities go up to $3.85 trillion, and of course, nobody has that kind of money. Let's go ahead and slide on down to signs. Recession weeks away, based on commercial loan data. We have a chart there, and if you look at past recessions, when the commercial and industrial loans start downturning, that's happened during recessions in the past, and we're now seeing a top where it's going sideways, and it was just a minor decrease in 2008 that just about brought everything down. We've got restaurant sales that continue downward, and if you've been following all the employment reports, you wonder how all this hiring in restaurant entertainment is going on when sales go down. It doesn't make much sense, and part of that's because they're lying. Don't have it here, but basically 93% of the job creation since 2008 has been fudge factor using the birth-death model, and it's not real jobs. So that's part of the answer for you. We have the yield curve going flat and inverted. This is more of an advanced concept, something I learned about in my investments class for my master's in finance. And when the yield curve goes negative, basically it's saying that people are more willing to pay more for upfront than the future. And again, we've got charts showing how this is highly correlated to recessions. We had the news going back at the end of March, beginning of April, where central banks are either stopping their quantitative easing, or in case of the Fed, they're planning on the opposite, which is called quantitative tightening. So QE, if you were using a car analogy, that's putting your foot on the gas. That's what was done to make the stock market look good. And it bought assets from banks at full value, so banks didn't have a problem. Quantitative tightening going the other way, and we really don't know exactly what's going to happen because we've never been in this position before in history. But it's the equivalent of hitting the brake. So with no new money going in, that's like coasting. Quantitative tightening, hitting the brake. It's again one of those factors we didn't even see during the Great Depression. In Houston, things are so great, they're selling some of the city streets to get money. You've probably also heard about Illinois, and of course there's other states, and also Puerto Rico having problems. Again, those were not things that we had to deal with back in 2008. The velocity of money continues its downward trend. We've got stock selling in addition to the overvaluation, and there's many factors there. We've talked about how companies have been using accounting tricks to boost their earnings, and they've also been buying back shares, which also boost their earnings. So we're probably even more overvalued than what the quants out there will say. I say there were a couple of dozen different ways of calculating how expensive the market is. Well, remember, we've got baby boomers that have invested in IRAs, 401ks, and when they turn 70, they are forced to take a percentage out each year. So you're going to have a selling pressure in addition to having this overvalued market. We also have employment, and it's not really as low as they say, but basically when you get down to that level, this shows how that ends up being a sign for the start of the next recession. So that's kind of in a nutshell, giving you the tea leaves. And when we come back, we'll do what we can to cover the rest under other. This is John Regan at the controls today. Down in the other section, then there's the asset declines. And this comes from an interview with Steve St. Angelo of SRS Rocco Report. He was on with Peak Prosperity, which is Chris Martinson's organization. And he started talking about real estate. And he expects in the first wave, there'll be a 30 to 50% decrease in real estate markets. And then within the next 5 to 10 years, he believes we can easily see a 75% or more reduction in real estate values. So if you're thinking about selling your house, now would probably be a decent time to do so. If you were looking to buy, I would just wait until after this next wave hits. You should get a nice discount. You might have to be in cash or secondarily in gold or silver to protect the asset value. If you're happy where you are and happy with your debt load, then don't worry about it. We also can't grow out of this problem. That's one of those things that people have a lot of hopium in Trump that he's going to really ignite this economy and things will get better. No, we can't grow out of the problems gives a list of the presidents since World War II and what their average growth rate was for their administration. Obama had the worst at 1.6%. Truman had the second worst at 1.7%, but he was dealing with the aftermath of World War II. So even with what he had to deal with, he beat Obama. Only two presidents had more than 4% growth during their administration. That was Kennedy at 4.3% and Johnson at 5.3%. I don't think we're going to see anything like what Kennedy and Johnson did, because this isn't the 60s. We're living in a different world. Even if Trump manages to double, and let's just be generous here and say Obama's growth rate was 2%, just to make the math easy, and he doubles it to 4%. What does an additional 2% of GDP mean? Let me round up GDP to 20 trillion. It's not that high. 2% of 20 trillion is $400 billion. So even if the federal government could tax 100% of a 2% growth, $400 billion wouldn't even take care of the federal budget deficit. So no, we're not going to grow out of this. Otherwise, what's the recommendations for what's coming? The important thing is to, have your food and water in place. Much like the Great Depression, being able to grow some, most, or all of your own food would be preferable. That way you don't go hungry as things spiral out of control. Beyond that, whatever you can do to get out of debt, because this time debt will matter. If it was the World War III scenario, debt wouldn't matter because there wouldn't be the banks around. And the way things are in today's world, the worse your credit score is, the more you have to pay for everything else, whether it's insurance or rent or interest rates, keeping yourself in the best shape that you can. And before we run out of time here, if this doesn't get you mad, I don't know what will. Report out of Syria. And we only have the one source, so you can take it for what it's worth, but it is consistent with what we see. There's a persecution of Christians going on, and this one just took it to a level that has had me rather upset. Roughly 250 children, age 4 and under, were put in an industrial mixer and kneaded to death. It's time to wake up and understand we're at war. We have been for 1,400 years.